Bears in Black.
Hey everybody, it's Jackie from Bears in Black, and we're here to add a little video to our YouTube channel. Heather did that unboxing video first. I don't have anything I'm expecting in the mail, so she suggested that perhaps I talk a little bit about what went into putting together my entry for Candyland Live, the jumping class, the whole Legend of Zelda themed thing. So the jumping class at Candyland Live was a little bit different from what a lot of our jumping classes traditionally are. It was just called over fences, and the only rules to it were to have a horse and an obstacle that's going to jump interact. I thought long and hard about this. My original plan was to do a horse refusing a jump, which could possibly have worked. Probably would have been a little bit lame in light of what else showed up there. And then one night I woke up with this idea of, why don't we do a Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild themed jump. I had already kind of had plans on the back burner for eventually doing some sort of performance setup set in that world already, so this was probably just a natural progression, and fortunately it happened with enough time for me to go ahead and put it into motion, because I had this idea about a month before the show. I also had to ship everything to the show, so everything had to be ready like a good week to 10 days before the show actually went off. So my idea was to go ahead and have Link, who is the protagonist of the video game, interacting with one of the monsters, this giant killer robot thing called a Guardian Stalker. In the game, Guardian Stalkers are really intimidating for quite a while. They can be a little tough too once you figured out kind of where their weak spots are. So I decided to just go ahead and try doing that kind of thing. What I did first was I went into the game and took a whole bunch of screenshots to get a sense of scale of these things, because they are quite large. I think that my Guardian actually ended up being a little bit smaller than 1/9 scale, but I was limited by the materials that I could also get. I also, in order to do this, had to get the perfect doll. And what we have here is my Link doll. If you guys follow Anne Field's blog about Field of Dolls Studio, Anne is responsible for this doll. She turned him into a 3 or 4 part blog series on his exact creation, because he was a little bit more complicated than I think she anticipated, but I think he came out perfect. He's very bendable. He can stand. I can put him in all kinds of positions in the saddle. He shoots that arrow off that horse really nicely. For my horse, obviously needed a jumping model. I have several to choose from. I selected the Briar Bristol because it would be the easiest thing for me to kind of pack and ship and not be worried about it breaking. He does have an aftermarket stand that I got from Bookshelf Barnes. Tack-wise, he's actually wearing older pieces of tack that I kind of crammed together. He's got a Michelle McKinney Western saddle that was built for an Arabian, so it has kind of a rounded skirt. He has a Desktop Barnes saddle pad. The bridle was actually made by Carrie Cheney. I just removed the noseband from it because in the game, for some reason, they don't really use Cavesons in Hyrule. I don't know why. This isn't an exact match for the stuff in the game, but I figured it would be close enough for what I was trying to do. Perhaps there will be another time for an exact match of tack in the game. We'll see. So, Link's bow and arrow are actually an older piece that I also had probably 2 years ago. Horseback archery started to get to be a thing in the hobby. Don't really know why, but I bought a horseback archery set that I really haven't used a whole lot. So I repurposed the bow and the arrows for that. Eventually, I'll be making him kind of a specialty arrow from the game. I sort of ran out of time, got really busy procrastinating, so that never actually happened in time for Candyland, but there you have it. So we're gonna put him over there, and we'll put your weapons over there, and we'll get on to our Guardian. So the Guardian had to be made in such a way that I could ship it fairly easily, because I was flying to this show in Colorado, and there was just no way I could bring this thing onto a plane with the other things I had to bring onto the plane with me. So it's built in about 4 or 5 parts that can come apart. It's also built out of things that are relatively inexpensive, so if something happens, it gets some damage, I can redo it very easily, and actually there are some pieces I need to redo because coming back from Colorado, I've got a little bit of damage. I started out with the legs. The Guardian Stalker has kind of these long, flexible legs that it kind of spiders around on. Really freaky. I originally looked at gooseneck lamp pieces. Those are really expensive and fairly short. What I ended up doing was going to Home Depot and getting some flexible conduit cable. So it's this stuff right here. I can bend it somewhat. I can't bend it too much because otherwise it'll break and split like that. The ends of it do have little wires sticking out, which is actually kind of cool because when you chop off one of the legs of these things in the game, there are little wires. So eventually what I could do is make a whole other rig like this and set it up with different legs. So they are wired onto a wooden embroidery hoop. And obviously I can kind of fold these legs any other way I need to get them into the box to ship. They also kind of do sit fairly low on the ground, which is fine because that's how these things run around in the game. The feet are little wing nuts that are wired onto the end. I have to figure out a better way for these to fix these on because they do fall off when I ship them, and I would like them to look a little bit better. But again, running out of time for that, there'll be another time to put this together and make it even better. So that's the legs. I'm going to move those over to the side. Now, there are Guardians in the game that don't have the legs on them, so I could use the rest of this kind of as a standalone as well. Almost everything else for this came out of the floral department at AC Moore. So we start off with the body. This is a half round piece of styrofoam. I cut a hole in the top. I cut the things out for the legs to kind of go in. The black line inside is where my embroidery hoop goes. What I actually did was in the store was I took this piece over to the embroidery section and started stuffing embroidery hoops into it to see what would work. I bought the biggest one they had that would fit inside of this. And it turns out it actually works really pretty well. It's just painted with acrylic paint. The decorations on the outside of this, you'll see there's kind of outlined in pink and then some tan. I wanted to do the tan in craft foam. However, craft foam apparently doesn't come in this color. I went to several stores, couldn't find it. If I were to do this again, I would like to try find something that's a little bit more 3D. What I'm using here is a kind of an expensive high-end art paper because it was the right color and it was kind of the right texture for what I wanted it to. Behind it, the pink parts, normally in the game, this kind of lights up when it sees you, and it's terrifying when one of these does this. I didn't have time to try and rig lights into this whole thing, so this is just hot pink poster board. I did make patterns for the various decorations that are on here, and saved those, in case I want to go ahead and build another one of these. Because as I was going, I made all kinds of plans as to how I would do this better, the next time. We'll see. So that's the dome. The next part of it is this little collar, which can rotate around in the game. Obviously, here it sits static. Again, this is just 2 pieces of round styrofoam. 2 pieces. The top is kind of beveled a little bit, painted pink, and then with those decorations on top. I might actually redo this whole thing because I'm not totally thrilled with this pattern. Inside, there's a little cutout. What that is for are the lights that go on the inside. Normally what will happen is the head sits on here. When this thing activates, it'll kind of pop up and move a little bit, and there's these little blue lights. My lights are not blue, they are purple, because I could not find blue lights. But the battery box just sits in there. This just sits on there, and the lights just kind of sit there and light up. Ta-da! It looks very cool. This piece is the one piece I did not ship. I carried this because it's a very long string of very teeny little lights that are just kind of looped together and then held together with tape. I had another setup that had a light up thing, and the battery box constantly broke open on the way there and on the way back. That one was a little bit more difficult to try to put together at the show. We'll talk about that another day. Finally, I have my head of my Guardian. The little earpieces did get some damage on the way back and forth to Colorado, so I will probably just take them off and redo them. They are made out of craft foam, just because it comes in dark brown, it doesn't come in light brown. This piece was a big cone shape that I cut down to the size I wanted. There is a little hole there where the kind of the eyeball on this thing is, and what goes inside there is a little LED light. This is called a balloon light. You can apparently get these and put them in, light them up and put them inside large balloons, and they glow for 8 hours and they don't break your balloon and all that. As far as I can tell, I could only get them locally in white. You can find them in other colors online. I didn't have that kind of time. I also didn't want to buy 20 things in different colors I wasn't going to need. So what I did with this is I took a dark blue Sharpie and just colored the outside of the bulb, and then when you twist it and turn it on, look at that, it lights right up and it goes right in there, and now it's all scary, right? Don't you feel nervous? If I'm gonna do this again, and like I said, I have some repairs I need to make to this before it goes to its next show. I already have its next show kind of plotted out. What I would like to do is to get a really small red laser pointer and kind of hide it in here somewhere. Because what these things will do is they have a red laser target. They basically zap on you before they're going to go ahead and blow you up. You have a minute or two to kind of figure out what you're going to do in that time. I would love to have a red laser pointer pointed right at my doll as in this setup, because I think it'd be cool. If you were a game player in this setup, there were a couple little Easter eggs that I put out for you. First of all, we bought some little like trees and rocks and stuff. There's apparently a whole thing people do where they set up little fairy gardens in their backyard, and you can get all kinds of stuff to do that if you want to, set fairy gardens up in your potted plants or whatever. Or you can make perfect little Korok puzzles. This little guy is made out of air-dried clay. He has a craft foam mask, and then he's just painted. There were also a couple little flowers in the setup. What I did was you go to the bridal section and you buy a package of little tiny flowers like this, and then you take a light blue marker and you customize them. And there you go, you have 1/9 scale Silent Princess. I only made 2 for my setup. I suppose at some point there could be a whole Legend of Zelda themed cross-country jump with a whole flower bank full of these. Again, perhaps we'll see in a couple of months, depending on what else I get done. Anyway, this was super fun for me to kind of set up. It is a little bit big for most shows, so I'm gonna probably look for places I can show it that don't have a big hard limit on what size footprint I can put this on. It's kind of an impetus for more setups in this kind of environment. So you can look for more Breath of the Wild Legend of Zelda entries from me. Be forewarned, I apologize to everyone out there when I start setting up killer monsters. I mean, I guess it's a step over zombies. You be the judge. When I do that, perhaps we'll do another video about how we kind of went into that. Until then, have a great day.